En tant que président du château et au nom d'Éric de Chasset, directeur général de l'Institut national d'histoire de l'art, je voudrais vous accueillir aujourd'hui pour cette nouvelle édition, vous dire le plaisir qu'on a de vous voir si nombreux, former des vœux pour ces 3 jours qui vont être certainement passionnants. Et avant qu'on accueille Jeff Koons, ce que fera Pierre Rosenberg dans quelques instants, je voulais simplement vous dire qu'on a la chance d'avoir un message de notre ministre, Françoise Nyssen, qui est représentée aujourd'hui par Jean-Miguel Pire. Jean-Miguel est quelqu'un qui connaît très bien le festival parce qu'il a été à ses débuts. Il a accompagné l'université de printemps à l'époque de Frédéric Mitterrand. Et donc, il connaît très bien cette belle manifestation. Donc, bienvenue à Jean-Miguel. Merci d'être présent pour représenter la ministre. Mais je ne veux pas être plus long. Je veux simplement que vous puissiez entendre le message que Françoise Nyssen a tenu à nous délivrer au début de ce festival. Et ensuite, je laisserai la place à Jeff Koons et à Pierre Rosenberg. Merci.
Monsieur le Président, cher Jean-François Hébert, cher Éric de Chasset, cher Pierre Rosenberg, chers amis, je regrette de ne pas pouvoir être présente parmi vous aujourd'hui pour ce festival d'exception qui vous réunit chaque année par dizaines de milliers, qui vous fait venir chaque année de plus loin, de plus en plus loin et qui montre chaque année à quel point la soif de culture et la soif de savoir autour de la culture sont grandes et ardentes dans ce pays. Je tenais à vous adresser ce court message pour vous dire combien je suis avec vous, malgré tout, par le cœur et la pensée, pour les 3 jours à venir. Vous pouvez compter sur moi, évidemment, pour soutenir avec autant d'énergie que mes prédécesseurs cet événement, cette formidable discipline qu'est l'histoire de l'art et les métiers qui l'entourent. Et vous pouvez compter sur moi, plus largement, pour accomplir au sein du ministère qui vient de m'être confié tout ce qui sera en mon possible pour faire vivre partout et chaque jour la culture telle que vous la vivez ici à travers cette discipline, c'est-à-dire une culture riche, toujours plus nourrie, toujours plus diverse, faite de création et de patrimoine façonné par tous les arts, c'est-à-dire une culture accessible aussi, y compris dans ce qu'elle a le plus exigeant, grâce notamment au travail de pédagogie et de transmission entrepris par les spécialistes historiens et scientifiques, tel que c'est accompli ici. Culture accessible aussi à tous les âges de la vie, y compris aux plus jeunes, grâce à l'école, et vous savez combien cela m'importe. Faire travailler ensemble les mondes de l'éducation et de la culture, c'est l'une de mes priorités, et c'est aussi une chose que ce festival réalise parfaitement avec le cabinet des natures fantastiques que vous découvrirez avec l'Université du Printemps, organisée par le ministère de l'Éducation nationale, que je remercie chaleureusement. La culture, telle que vous la vivez ici, à travers l'histoire de l'art, et telle que je compte la défendre, c'est aussi une culture résolument ouverte vers les autres, vers l'international, actrice du monde dans lequel elle s'inscrit. Vous aurez la chance d'entendre l'immense Jeff Koons dans quelques instants, et d'autres intervenants venus des États-Unis, payés à l'honneur pour cette édition. Je les remercie pour leur présence, je remercie aussi l'ensemble des partenaires américains pour leur soutien, sans lequel cette édition n'aurait pu voir le jour. La vie culturelle française est faite de ces échanges, soyez sûrs que je mettrai toute mon énergie à les développer. Voilà, chers amis, les quelques mots que je tenais à vous adresser aujourd'hui. Il me reste à vous souhaiter un excellent festival à toutes et à tous, en attendant d'avoir, je l'espère, l'honneur et le plaisir de vous retrouver l'année prochaine.
J'ai beaucoup de chance parce qu'évidemment, je n'ai pas besoin de vous présenter Jeff Koons, que vous connaissez tous. Et nous avons, nous, beaucoup de chance qu'il soit venu faire cette conférence inaugurale du Festival d'Histoire de l'Art, qui prouve le grand intérêt qu'il porte à notre discipline, le grand intérêt qu'il y porte. Et je voudrais non pas tellement parler, parce que je serai très très bref, de Jeff Koons, l'artiste qui est là, mais dire d'une part que j'ai une grande admiration pour lui en tant que collectionneur. C'est un grand collectionneur. Il collectionne notamment, et c'est évidemment pour moi une raison de lui être encore plus reconnaissant, il collectionne naturellement Poussin, qu'il aime énormément. Et puis d'autre part, c'est quelqu'un qui aime l'histoire de l'art, qui la connaît bien. Et je l'ai promené au Louvre à plusieurs reprises. Et visiter avec lui un musée est une dure épreuve, parce qu'il vous pose des questions auxquelles vous ne savez pas toujours répondre. La curiosité de Jeff Koons, c'est une chose absolument extraordinaire, extrêmement enthousiasmante, et je crois que le fait qu'il soit venu ici, dans ce festival d'histoire de l'art, prouve l'intérêt que les artistes, d'une manière générale, lui en particulier, portent à la peinture, à l'art ancien, à nous tous, aux historiens de l'art, et c'est à cet égard que je le remercie du fond du cœur d'être venu ici à Fontainebleau, et vous allez maintenant l'entendre. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Good luck. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, it's really such an honor to be here, and I have to thank the chairman and the director. I'm so grateful to Annick and Pierre for coming to speak to me originally about participating in the festival. And it's such an honor because, you know, so many of you are friends, and I appreciate so much the work that you do within your realm of art history. I grew up in York, Pennsylvania, and my aunt used to take me to the Philadelphia Museum when I was younger, but I never really felt like I experienced a museum until my first day of art school. And I was 17 years of age. I went to the Baltimore Museum of Art, and I saw the Koons sisters collection. And when I went in through the museum, I realized that I knew nothing about art history. I did not know Cézanne. I did not know Braque. I didn't really know Matisse's work. I would have known Picasso. I would have known Dali. And I survived that moment. And a lot of people don't survive that moment. They feel that, you know, they have to already be pre-prepared. They have to come to the table with information. And you don't have to come to anything. You just have to come to the table with yourself, your own experiences. And so from that moment, I realized that I wanted to create an art that let the viewer know that they were perfect. Everything about them was perfect. And it's really about the experience from that moment forward. So, you know, as I went on with my work as a young artist, I would collect postcards and different type of images and objects. But when I started to be able to have the means to collect work, I started to put together a collection that had meaning to me. If I think about the reason why I collect things, I want to preserve things. I would say that's the most important thing to me. I'll look at something, I'll think, wow, I really love the power of that piece, and I want to protect it. And I want to protect it so that it can continue to have a voice to future generations. This is an image of Nectanebo, the first or second. I'm sorry, that changed. This would be from around 360 to 343 BC. It's a quartzite head, a colossal head of the pharaoh. It's about 16.5 inches in height. And I just love the masculine power of the piece, the coloring of the piece, and this, you know, kind of profound dialogue of a description of, you know, what it means to be a human and have an external form. You can feel the density of the interior of the piece, but the outside of the piece, how it takes form, and a definition of the self. And it's fighting time. It's in a dialogue with time. It kind of accepts it, but at the same time, it's fortifying itself to continue a dialogue with time and embrace it. This is a piece by Quentin Massis. This would be around circa 1500. And I've lived with this piece. I had it for many years in my bedroom. And so I know the type of warmth that it would generate. And so that the halo effect, you have the gold leaf against a very kind of dark blue background, and you have the contrast of the red and kind of the turquoise kind of cloth. But it really emanates a kind of a calming power. It's like a yin and a yang, actually, as far as if you think about the light of the halo and the darkness, or the contrasting colors of the red and the green, and the softness of the beard. This is another work which is by Riemenschneider. This would be around 1510. It's St. Catherine. It's a large wood carving. There are some polychrome elements, very, very mild, that are around the eyes, some dark inlay of paint, and also a little bit of gilding. But I've always loved Riemenschneider's work, and in the 80s I did a body of work called Banality. I created pieces like Ushering in Banality and Baron Policeman, and these polychrome sculptures that were really influenced a lot by Riemenschneider, even though Riemenschneider would keep his monochrome. But I've always enjoyed the dialogue of this time with Riemenschneider and Donatello and Leonardo really calling for kind of a new classicism of not polychroming works. And thinking about the history of work that's polychromed. I really love when the 2D and the 3D are together. So, in looking at ancient works that have been completely polychromed, you have the benefit of the pigment and the power of the image brought to the surface, and at the same time the power of form. Or in Lascaux, the caves of Lascaux, if you go through, like with the torch, you have the 2D and the 3D together, the drawings on the wall, but emphasizing the 3D aspect of the cave itself, pronouncing a rump of an animal. This is Cornelius van Haarlem. This would be around 1590. And this is Hercules and Achilles. This is a very large painting, a Mannerist painting, dealing with the labors of Hercules. It's really a masterpiece. I've had this on loan to the Metropolitan Museum, but I love the power of Hercules, the form, the movement, the energy, and then the different kind of vignettes taking place, showing some of the different parts of the labors and the creation of the Horn of Plenty. I also am always kind of captivated by the rocks that are down here in this corner, because for me it feels like a reference to more of like a Christian style painting where there's usually like a rocks or skull, the skull that's making a reference, but this has a very strong skull-like type of quality. But yet, of course, it's paganism. This is a Spranger painting. This is the Triumph of Venus. And it's a little difficult to see right now, but there's a drapery hanging down right in this area. Pardon me. And that drapery is very, very similar to the drapery that is in Spranger's Venus and Adonis. And it's a very phallic male shape hanging there. But I love the voluptuousness of the form, the seductiveness of the form. This is a Poussin painting from around 1620 circa. This is a painting that I saw at an auction house, and I was really captivated by the power of the painting. And when I looked at it, some of the forms, the satyr's form, it wasn't very clear. And the arm actually wasn't in, sometimes this is changing on its own, so you have to forgive me, I'm not pushing any buttons. But the the hand right here was actually not in that position. It was folded up here, and I realized something was a little muddied. So I acquired the painting, and I took it to the Metropolitan Museum, and we X-rayed it, and we removed the paint. In the 19th century, the work was shown in England, and a lot of Poussins at that time were overpainted. So we were able to remove all the paint that was there that brought the satyr's hand. This is the original paint that was there that brought the satyr's hand down into Venus's private area. This is another Poussin. This would be a studio of Poussin. David Jaffe from the National Gallery in London, he knew how much that I loved the Triumph of Silenos in London. And so he saw that one was coming up for auction here in France. And so he informed me, so I acquired the painting. And again, I took it to the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and we looked at it, and all of the I'm sorry, but this is changing on its own. I'm not touching anything, but all of the paint, all the pigments are from the 17th century, from the time of the painting. Even the type of fading that it had, we thought seemed very consistent where the Triumph of Silenos was hung in Cardinal Richelieu's palace. But eventually, even though we started to think maybe we found the original Triumph of Silenos, the weaving of the canvas, even though the canvas is from the 17th century also, it's a tighter weave than the one that's at the painting of one of the triumphs at the Nelson Atkins Museum in the United States, and also with the weaving that's with the Triumph of Silenos in London. So this would just be a studio of Cézanne, but these line up perfectly. If you put the two images on top of each other, they're really very, very identical. One of the things that changes is just the color of this cloth right here. I keep this painting above my bed at my farmhouse in Pennsylvania. I have to say it's spectacular too. This is Nicholas Nofer, and I want to be sure that I have the time correct on this piece. But I think that this is like 1590. Or no, the Nicholas Nofer would be the first half of a 17th century. But I really love this painting. I don't know if you're able to see this, but this is Venus getting out of her bed with Cupid. And there's an attendant back here viewing her, but she spilled her chamber pot. So you have all this urine just coming out towards you. And this is a beautiful Venus. I mean, she's voluptuous. She's very, very maternal. She's given birth many times, her body. She's extremely fertile. This is a Lemois painting. This is Adam and Eve. It's a large copper plate. One of the things that always fascinated me about this painting is the head of the lion down in this corner, and you have this little hare, this rabbit there with it, but the face is really divided. It's similar a little bit to Titian's painting in Venice, the kind of the funeral type painting where you look at the stone head of the lion. You know, one side's a more gentle side and the other has more of a violent aspect. So you don't know if Adam is going to stand up here and put his foot down here on the tail of the lion, and whether it's going to react and kill him or whether it's going to be more passive. I acquired the Lemois because having my exhibition in Versailles and being able in the Salon de Hercules to see the ceiling, and I was really very moved by his work. This is a Fragonard painting. I've always loved Fragonards that involve the interaction of the human form with animals. And many times I'll spend my New Year's in Munich to go to the old Pinakothek, so that we're able to look at the woman with the dog in bed, the Fragonard. But this is a woman with two puppies. This is a Courbet. This Courbet would be from 1861, a woman with parrot. This is one of the last Courbets that I acquired, and I love the painting. It's so seductive. This young woman is toying with that parrot, kind of sexually toying with it. It may break its neck. She's in complete control, and everything is just at her whim. But the lace work, the painterly quality of the piece and the color, it's really a spectacular painting. This is Femme Nue, Courbet. This is 1866. And I acquired this painting from an auction. And I really fell in love with the painting because I was looking at a lot of Courbet, and I love the Courbets earlier than this, a time period, which is Venus and Psyche. And some of the paintings still exist, some were lost during the war. But in many cases, you have Venus looking down at Psyche and maybe dropping rose petals down on top of her, or in some manner using the hand up here above Psyche. And if you look here at the painting, in her dress or type shawl area here, you can see the negative shape of the hand. And it's really in a very, very similar position that in the Venus and Psyche paintings, that the hand would be on top. It also, of course, makes connections to Titian's kind of Venus Aphrodite painting. When I acquired the painting, I took the painting to a museum, and we immediately X-rayed it because I thought maybe we could find traces of origin of the world underneath. This is a finished painting. Of course, it's a study for the woman with parrot that's at the Metropolitan. But if you look at the form, this would be the vaginal area on origins of the world. The leg would come out this way. The breasts are in relatively the same type area, the same with the sheet that goes up over. But when we X-rayed it, we didn't find anything underneath. But that would be Joe Hefferman. This is a Courbet wave painting. It's dated 66. I don't know if that's the correct date, that if he made it a little later. But it's a beautiful palette wave. This is the calf, the white calf. I've always, of course, enjoyed this painting because I've always looked at it as one of Courbet's self-portraits. And if you look at the painting, the calf's eye, it has a blue eye, a human eye. And of course, this painting was created right at a time when he was ready to go into self-imposed exile. So he kind of felt a little bit like being set up to be slaughtered, like the kind of the fate of this calf would be. And also the painting, of course, makes reference to Courbet's central paintings that, like the source and, the women that are beside the streams, the bathers. This would be, of course, from Courbet's home region. This is a Manet watercolor, and the blacks in this watercolor are really spectacular. They're so rich and so deep to this day. They're just such a pure black. And when I saw that this piece was available, I acquired it because it made me think of the Barnes collection and the Manet where people are tarring the boat. And it's kind of a very similar boat that they're tarring in that painting. It's the watercolor that's on the Catalogue Raisonné cover for watercolors. This is Manet's Woman in the Tub. And, Manet really changed my life. I explained that when I went to art school, how naive I was of art history. And so that I mentioned the first day going to the Museum of Art School, but I also went to my first art history lesson that same day. And I remember my teacher, Bo Davis, bringing up a slide of Manet's Olympia. And he started speaking about the painting, and he talked about the black cat over in the far right corner and what the meaning could have been in 19th century France, or the bouquet of flowers being offered to the woman, the position of the woman and the relation to Goya's work. And I tell you, I felt like the luckiest person in the room. Because I realized that, since the time I was 3 years old, I kind of defined myself through drawing and painting. I took lessons every weekend from the age of 7. I was in art class every day, but I had no idea what art was. It was something that actually probably created anxiety in me, creating, perfect ellipses for a top of a glass, or to be able to make a vase and flowers, or whatever the situation is, to create this illusion. But all of a sudden it was revealed to me how connective, like the hub of a wheel, that art can be. And it could connect me to all the humanities. I could be involved in philosophy and psychology and theetics, physics, aesthetics, the whole realm of human endeavors. And my life has never ceased, my parameters growing and expanding from the realization of that moment. Because every day art is able to provide that to us. It lets us be involved in everything. I always thought the idea the dilettante was a negative. That day I realized to be a dilettante was fantastic. It was being a Renaissance man. Woman in the Tub has a similar type of background. These works are from the inside of Manet's home at the time. And this would be also a late nude of Manet. This is from 1879. And I love the late work. I love the power, the boldness of the dark line. For me, it makes me think of maybe like the dark edge of maybe a Michelangelo painting. It may be connected to more Spanish type paintings, but I love the power of it. But what I love about Manet more than anything is in the late work is there's no anger. I mean, you see this, there's no anger through his work, but the late work, especially being ill and suffering and having a disease that could, come from sexually transmitted activity, there's no anger. It's just, there's no judgment. This is a very late work of 4 apples, created in the last months of his life. The Manets I keep in my bedroom. This is a Bouguereau, and I love the Bouguereau because it makes me think of Pier and Gino. It makes me think of anything from like Gaeta in going back to paganism and coming up through Christianity, in looking at the images of women. And it's completely feminine form. I mean, it's just a floating vaginal image. And maybe the birds are the pleasure, the pleasure of the woman. But you can see the spiritual context too. Even the feet are there almost in a Christ-like position, relating this image to Christianity and the presentation of the woman and kind of the hovering. The title of this is Day. This is a head of Fernanda, a Picasso sculpture from 1906. And I have to say, this was really a nice find for me. And I realized, I saw in an auction catalog in New York that they had this head, and they said it was 1906. And then another place they're mentioning that it's a cast, that it's one of 9 from 1960. And all of a sudden I went and I looked at the piece, and there was no stamp on it. And everything was telling me that this is, one of the early pieces. There are very few of them. There could be 4 or 5 that are from this time period, from 1906, 1911, around this time period, that when Villard would be making these on order. So I acquired the piece, and I brought in the Picasso Foundation, and of course this is one of the early pieces, because it didn't even have any of the markings that the catalog was saying about being stamped and numbered, and it's one of the early heads. And it's beautiful. One side of it, of course, is very kind of traditional, and then this side is more kind of Egyptian and just kind of like the outline of the eye. And he starts to go into his cubism. This is an Ilchemius painting, and Ilchemius is an American painter, turn of the century, turn of kind of the 20th century, and Ilchemius was one of America's most popular artists. In New York, he was huge, and he would make all these kind of very quirky little landscapes with nudes swimming in the water, and this is called The Bridge. And, Ilchemius loved Courbet, and you can see the reference here. He's referencing French landscape painting. He's referencing the origin of the world. This is all done by palette knife, the feminine form in the area. But I love the couple. The couple on the bridge, it's like they're contemplating sexuality. It's... And, of course, that's what we kind of within our own lives, one of the first things that we have to contemplate. We have to come to accept ourselves. And when we learn to accept ourselves, then we're able to go outward. And we're able to be engaged with the external world. And, of course, the highest realm of the objective and where art can take us is first through the acceptance of ourselves, but then it can take us to accept others. And but this is a very kind of primal acceptance of sexuality. Some people believe that this isn't really done by Ilchemius, and it could be Marcel Duchamp, making a reference and a takeoff on Ilchemius. I just want to be sure. I may have jumped too many there. This is Picabia, and this is one of the transparent paintings from his first exhibition called Me, M-I. And so it is, I love the transparency paintings, because to be able to get as much information into one kind of pictorial format and multiple different images and narratives kind of taking place at one time, I think is, such a creative invention. I've always loved Picabia's energy. The concept of the avant-garde, that we can create our own life, and then we can also affect the lives of people around us in the community. This is a Picasso. It's Maria Therese and her sister. This would be from around 1934. Right at the collapse of the art market, I saw that this painting came up for auction. And so it's a bone painting. It's making a reference to surrealism, and you can see that Picasso's referencing Magritte and maybe Miro, but I love the pussy willows here, the feminine form, and it's just really kind of a fantastic painting. And the way the window frame is done, these flat kind of areas also can make you think of like the shapes of what Picasso was doing around the time that he was doing the musicians and the different forms of Cubism. This is Dora Maar. This would be from 1939 to 1940. But you can see that even though it's kind of titled Dora Maar, you can see that Maria Therese is also in there. Having the highlights of the yellow here and the eyebrow and that kind of yellowish gold. And then that's the lighter side of the face, and then on the darker side of the face, more of a Dora Maar. But this is a painting that Picasso worked on for quite some time. This painting, the first time that I saw it, this is a Dora Maar. This would be from 41. This was in the Malbin collection, the Winston collection. Mrs. Malbin had it. She had the largest futurist collection in the United States. It was possibly the largest in the world. I met her when I worked at the Museum of Modern Art, and she invited me to her home. So as soon as you would open the door of her home, this was the painting that would greet you. And so when this work became available, I acquired it. And, I've always loved it because for me it also references the Picasso of the woman crying that's in the Tate. But it has this Egyptian quality, but it also has the tears and, it has the hat. And I always thought of the hat as also kind of a Manet type of reference. You have the Van Gogh reference, how it's painted. This is very, very high impasto paint. I love late Picasso, and I recently went and I saw the show, the Twombly show that was at the Pompidou, and it was a magnificent exhibition. And I think the Twombly show showed how an artist can really transcend to a higher level of consciousness. And you start off in that exhibition, you can see 1953, you can see some of Cy's early works and the motive that's taking place there, the way he's making these simple shapes. And you can go through the exhibition, and it's like he's preparing himself his whole life to his late work, and he absolutely creates the sublime. I mean, those images, those works are really from the other side. He reached a higher state of consciousness. And if you go back then and go to the first paintings, they're the closest to each other. It's like a preparation his whole life. I think Picasso's late work is also sublime work. I think Picasso got better and better, more and more layers of intuitive thought and I really learned. I was feeling at a certain point in my life that following kind of the Duchampian idea, the ready-made, and pursuing the ideal, the objective, that I was losing my freedom. And by embracing Picasso, I was able to understand that, even through the subjective and going inward and layer upon layer of intuitive thought, that the subjective brings you right back to the objective. But this is a kiss from 67. You feel kind of a very Roman type of imperial quality. This is a kiss painting, and this was originally in the Nasher collection. I acquired it, and this kiss is from, this is October 69, and 69 is my favorite year for Picasso. But when I look at this painting, I think that Picasso's referencing Titian. He's referencing Venus and Adonis, the whole energy of moving from the left-hand side to the right-hand side of the canvas. But there's a role reversal between Venus and Adonis. He becomes more the groping one, the holding on one. So I think that this painting's very much about his sexual and artistic conquests in his life. If I look at the painting too, it also reminds me a little bit of Mademoiselle's d'Avillon. If you look at the pillow or the elbow up in this upper corner, very similar to the upper corner of Mademoiselle's d'Avillon, her body becomes like the bowl of fruit at the bottom. And I think this is really paintings about conquest. And the late work is just layered. It's layer upon layer of the humanism that they experience, the connectivity through art, and his conquests. I love also the Egyptian type of quality to the piece. There's actually a little bit of like a sand type of pigment mixed into the painting. The other closest painting to this is the one in the Picasso Museum that has the color blue. This is a kiss couple, Picasso. This is also from 69. This makes reference, of course, to Van Gogh and kind of the Garden of Eden. But it also, there's this shape that occurs in a lot of Picasso kiss paintings. And in Italy, there's kind of like a festival around Christmas time where there's like a witch. Can anybody say the name of Befana, like the Befana? And I always think of this almost like Picasso's Befana, because you'll see it in all the paintings. And maybe he picked it up from Titian, that within these motives that you see this type of shadow. But this reminded me of like, is it a Worcestershire type cat type figure almost sitting there. This Picasso is actually probably the one that I feel most dear to, I'm drawn to. I can never get enough of this painting. And, this is a couple from 69. This is from November. And, in this late work, Picasso looked back through his life. He really was looking back at his whole life, work that he created before, his different loves, his different romances. And when I look at this painting, this is around the time he was also doing the Musketeers with the long pipe. But if you notice, this is a shorter pipe. And maybe this is going back and referencing around 1906, this time period when he's smoking opium. And maybe that's actually an opiated pipe. And when I look at this, of course, at this time period, Picasso's with Jacqueline, but her hair almost looks like a French beret. And I know that it's just the hair up on the head, but it looks kind of like a beret. Her body is like a Maria Therese type body. His chest is kind of feminine, dealing with his own kind of mortality. He has on his classic kind of blue shirt. But if you look at his head, either like she's kind of just sucking his brains out and kind of dealing with his depletion of sexuality or loss of control. That's what I thought the painting was. But then it changed for me, because all of a sudden I looked at the painting and I realized that this painting's actually referencing the painting that's in the museum in Basel, of the gray painting of the family with the father and the mother and the child. And that if you look here, actually this is a child kissing the mother. See how that's a baby's head? And that you have the Trinity. Again, you have this family unit, such as, the other kind of classical one with her head is kind of divided, and the Picasso is on this side of the head, and I think it's Paulo is sitting on the lap. But it's a fantastic painting. This, of course, was also in Avignon. The other kiss was in Avignon exhibition also. This is a Magritte. This is called The End of Time. I also keep this at my farm in Pennsylvania because it just kind of represents, the end of time. But it makes reference to his cutouts that are taking place here, and maybe that was like a clock frame or and a very thick impasto that's painted here. Right before Magritte made the painting, I believe it's called Discovery, which is the woman that looks like plywood. He made 6 paintings incorporating these wooden type motifs, and this is one. This was in the first large exhibition he had of his work. This was above the fireplace in the major room. This is another Magritte. This is kind of from the Renoir type period that people refer to. I look at it and it's called La Premonition, but I look at it and I always think it's kind of like the tree of life, and the background reminds me of almost like a Florentine type background, even though it's a very different type of color situation, but it's very bright and colorful. This is another Magritte. This is called Ideas Claires, and this is from 1955, and of course you just have this boulder hovering and in between the ocean and the cloud. The ocean, it's the same ocean that he uses in the painting Sabotage, so it's the same type of curling wave. This is a Dali. This is the life of Mary Magdalene. And I love this period. This would be 1960, but it's, like a cloud, kind of smoke type of form where all of a sudden the sky starts to make up the form of Mary Magdalene. I met Dali. Dali was really very kind and generous to me when I was 18 years old. My mother told me Dali stays half the year at the St. Regis Hotel. So I called the hotel, I asked for Salvador Dali's room, and all of a sudden I heard, hello? And, it was Dali. And so I told him I'm a young fan, I'm an artist, I would really like to meet him. And he said, well, look, can you meet me this Saturday? I'll be in the hotel lobby at noon. And I said, I'll be there. And so sure enough, right at 12 o'clock, he came down. He had a big buffalo fur coat on, silver cane, elaborate handle, and tie tacks with all these jewels on, and his mustache was up. And so he asked me, I said hello, and we met, and he said, would you like to see my new exhibition? I have an exhibition at the Knoedler Gallery. And I said, sure. He said, I'm meeting a journalist there. I'll see you there in 15 minutes. So I went there, I looked around, and Dali was walking around with this French journalist, and she was quite tall, she was a blonde. And I didn't realize until many years later that it was probably Amanda Lear. And but he came over, he talked to me, he posed for some photographs, and I remember I was kind of shaking and juggling my camera around, and he put his mustache up and he was saying, come on, kid, I can't hold this pose forever. And so I was very, very nervous, but he posed for me in front of this painting. This is a very large painting, the hallucinogenic head of the royal tiger. And it also has a title that if you stand back 50 feet, you see 3 heads of Lenin. An amazing painting, but I bought the study for the painting, so this is in my bedroom also. So every morning I wake up and I can see the painting that Dali kind of stood in front of when I met him. Because I really left New York that day, a young kid, 18 years old, thinking, I can do this. I can do this too. I can make art a way of life. I can be part of this kind of avant-garde and just be consumed in art. This is a Roy Lichtenstein. This is a haystack painting. I think that I believe the year is 69 for the painting. But this painting was Andy Warhol's. Yeah, it's 1969. This is a large glass. I always loved Roy's 2D, 3D sculptures. The one of like the pitcher or the Matisse type motive of the goldfish. I think the pieces are absolutely sublime. And when the 2D and the 3D are together, that's really when I feel the most excitement about art. I feel the most power from art. This has a very kind of also African quality to it, but it's a large glass, so it's about 6 feet tall. This is a large, this is just a print, but it's a blue nude that Dorothy Lichtenstein let me acquire from her. I remember seeing one of these prints at Simone, Charles Simone's home. And I looked at this print and I thought, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And I told Dorothy, and then Dorothy let me acquire that. I had a mentor of Ed Paschke in Chicago. And Ed Paschke's a Chicago imagist. He passed away. But he was a teacher of mine at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And I also was his studio assistant. So every weekend I would stretch his canvases and I would help Ed on the paintings. And when I say help, he would have me sometimes apply some color. But Ed really kind of taught me the politics of the art world. And I think the most important thing he taught me, other than that everything's already here, you just have to look around, everything's already here. But he taught me that most people just shoot themselves in the foot and that they're really not at the service of their work. And I looked at Ed's life. Ed had a family, he had children, he was an artist, he was showing, he was exhibiting. And yeah, I noticed he was at the service of his work. Everything that he did was to help his work. And he was never, trying to do anything that would disempower his work. And so many people they say that they want to be involved in the dialogue of art and they want to participate, but actually they run from the dialogue. This is called Oliphant. This is one of Ed's paintings. This painting, I think, is I'm sorry, I'm not changing it, but it's doing that. But Oliphant is from 1971. And, Ed would take me around and he would show me where he would get his source material. And he would get it from strip clubs. And we would go into really seedy bars in Chicago. And maybe it'd be a strip club, and he'd show me the way the light hits the stage curtain. And that's the way he would use this sfumato type of technique of painting everything black and white and then glazing color, actually dry brushing it on top and feathering it out. And that's how he would get this kind of play of light. And, you look at these works and you feel things. So, I was developing and coming out of surrealism and Dada and, kind of outsider art. So Ed's work was like a parallel kind of pop, still based very much in personal iconography, but also it was looking outside. And Ed showed me and really taught me that everything's already here. You just have to open yourself up to it. This is another painting of Ed's called Wanda. And the first time this painting was offered to me was in 1991. Phyllis Kine, who was a really well-known Chicago dealer, offered it to me. And I looked at it and I thought, I don't think so. And even though there were aspects that I really loved of it and I regretted it so much, I thought, my gosh, how did I let that painting go? And of course, I was eventually able to acquire the painting. But, these were the type of performers that we would go see. They would be people that are completely tattooed or really kind of strange situations, Now, this is a little more exaggerated. She is a little extreme, but a lot of this is about acceptance, and my work becomes very involved about acceptance. If somebody would say, what is the main thing that I'm trying to do? I'm trying with my art to remove judgment, to remove hierarchy, and any form of segregation. And when you practice acceptance, everything's in play, absolutely everything. Everything's at your disposal to empower you and to be incorporated into the dialogue. But if you do make judgments and if you segregate, you're disempowering, because that energy, that thought of incorporation is no longer available to you. And I know everybody here is involved in art history, and so many things that you do are involved in, or at least are looked at as involving judgment. But it's very different to find something more relevant to you at one moment of time than something at a different point. It doesn't mean that something is better or more deserving. Everything can be perfect in its own being. It's just at different times in your life, things have different relevant qualities. So a judgment can still be removed, and you can still be discerning as far as feeling that one thing is more applicable at one time than something else. This is John Wesley, and John Wesley's really a great American artist. I love his work, a pop artist. And I saw this painting, and I thought, I have to have this painting. This is called, the Bumsteads, and I just want to be sure I get the exact title correct here, but it's just the Bumsteads. And this belonged to Donald Judd. And so I acquired it from the Donald Judd estate. But if you look at it, doesn't it make complete sense that this would be Donald Judd's? Just kind of even though there's so much information going on, at the same time, it has a beautiful simplicity. And even at the core of it, again, there's sexuality. This is another John Wesley. These are almost like two Priapus or phallic type symbols coming in from the side. This is a polka work on paper. It's a gouache, but Princess Gloria von Turn of Texas. I would always see this when I would visit Princess Gloria in Regensburg. And this piece became available, and I liked polka. Polka was fantastic. I had a retrospective at the Stedelijk Museum, and Sigmar was having a retrospective at the same time, and he would come over and he would sit on the floor and just lay around and talk, and he was so interesting and so engaged. And one time at the Venice Biennale, when I had my Made in Heaven exhibition, or showed some of the Made in Heaven work, and I was there, and Sigmar was there, and we were there with a couple friends, and we went to the Danieli Hotel to have a drink. And we go in and we go up to the concierge desk, and we're waiting for some friends to join us, and they have a stamp there. It's a red ink stamp, and Sigmar goes, doom, and I have a white suit on, white jacket, and he goes, boop, and he stamps it. And I was, Sigmar, what are you doing, And I ended up having that suit dry cleaned, but I never should have, because it was absolutely, it was kind of a wonderful, kind of perfect little gesture, and it was nice. I should have kept it as a work. But he was absolutely a really warm, generous person. I keep this in my dining room, I have 8 children. I have 6 young ones at home. I think they always get a kick out of this one. This is David Salle. I think David Salle is really a great artist, a wonderful painter. I think that his work is sometimes overlooked. I think it's very playful. It has a really interesting edge with modernism and looking at the history of art, and very, very playful and juxtaposing so many things. But this is called Lapwick's Revenge. It's a very large painting on a takeoff on a tapestry. And this is Jim Nutt. And when I was in 1974, I would have been probably 19 years old at the time. I went to the Whitney Museum, and they had a Jim Nutt retrospective. And it was the first time I saw Jim's work, and I was blown away, absolutely blown away. Because as I mentioned before about Ed Paschke, it was work that had personal iconography, totally inlaid to it, but at the same time it had this energy that it was paralleling pop art. And so it was work that was very much about feeling and generating feelings, but also involved in the generation of ideas. And Jim's work, even though it plays on the idea, the naive, and this very idiosyncratic art, and really involved in personal iconography, it embraces art history. And so, this piece is called Pin. And if I look at Pin, this is like the Venus of Willendorf just laying across the top of her head. I mean, it could be a gingerbread guy or something, but I think that these are Venuses. A lot of time, these are Venuses. This nose, it's like a feminine form. That could be a Venus. Looking at her dress. I mean, this reminds me of iconography that comes from the past, from art history, whether it's kind of early Christian work or where the time comes from, maybe possibly around Giotto. You know, I don't know. I was asking Pierre if he had an idea of the time, but I look at that, and that reminds me of art history and the connectivity of art history. This could also even be a reference to like a tunnel. You know, it's almost like the metaphor of the train entering the tunnel, the sexual metaphor. These paintings are also making connections to Picasso. You know, one side of the head is usually masculine, the other side is feminine. This one maybe is being younger. Here again, we have that form. I mean, is it kind of a limp Venus of Willendorf of some type, some Venus character? And is this a floor from like an early Christian painting? Is this a Venus? You know, it's hard to see right here, but they're little dots in like a hairnet, and it's like the constellation. I mean, it's the whole universe is inside her head there, her hairnet. And this is the last drawing that I acquired. It's a Jim Nutt drawing. And it's a weird drawing because it has this very young, almost like a Henry Dogger type of look to it because of the profile. But again, this relationship with different artists, referencing Picasso, maybe it's referencing Dogger. I look here and I think of the shirt here as like the Pergamon, you know, or it's like the side of a large sarcophagus. This type of interaction, it's all with, you know, really what it means to be human and our history. So now I thought just for a couple minutes, I'll just speak a little bit about my own work and, you know, how I view it. This is a piece that I made in 1978-79. It's inflatable bunny and flower. And when I made this piece, I had to go out and drink some beer afterwards because I felt so charged up from the experience of, you know, this bunny and this inflatable and just being reflected in the mirror. It was metaphysical because it was real. It was right here, right now, but there was also this connection to a different time and the sexual energy, the enlightenment of the sexual energy because of the affirmation that occurs. You're affirmed, the viewer, but the object's affirmed. And then the iconic quality of just kind of the bunny itself, the flower itself, because they're inflatables, they're anthropomorphic, they relate to what it means to be human. When it's inflated, it has life's energy. I mean, when these objects are de-inflated, it's like our last breath. So this is the opposite. This is an heightened situation. That's not the charger. This is a one-ball total equilibrium tank. This is 1985. I made other bodies of work. I did the new in between where I show vacuum cleaners for their newness. But I just wanted to hit on a couple kind of pieces that deal with metaphysics. And this is a one-ball total equilibrium. The ball just hovers in equilibrium. It's too light to go to the bottom of the tank, but it's too heavy to go to the top. And so it's like pre-birth and after death, and at the same time, the right here, right now. And so I wanted to kind of show more of kind of a more masculine side of kind of everyday ready-made situation. It's like the embryo in the womb. You know, the basketball was like an embryo in the womb. In 1986, I started working with Ileana Sonnabend, and she was my dealer up until when the gallery closed. But when I went with Ileana, I knew that my work was really going to have an international platform because Ileana always brought Americans to Europe and Europeans to America. So I made the rabbit to make a reference that I was always working with ready-made objects. And so I grew up in York, Pennsylvania, as I mentioned, and people put gazing balls in their yard. And a gazing ball is a glass globe. We'll look at some in a minute or two. But the rabbit, its head is a gazing ball, really. It's this made out of stainless steel, but it has the carrot to the mouth. It's like an orator, somebody making proclamations. Same time, it's like a symbol of a masturbator because of the carrot to the mouth. It's a symbol of resurrection, of Easter. It's a symbol of the Playboy bunny. This is why it's iconic, and it affirms you. It affirms your existence. It reflects you. You know, it's so fantastic to be here and everybody in this dialogue about art. For me, you know, the art only exists inside the viewer. And the things that we collect, that we embrace, we display, we show, they're really only transponders that can excite people, that they're able to come in contact with the art. And the art is the essence of our own potential. That's what's of value. And that's the art. And of course, that's all in the beholder's share, and that's why everybody's perfect, that nobody has to ever bring anything to the table. We've discussed art history and the lineage, and we appreciate the beauty. It's wonderful. It's a form of discussing time and enjoying what our forebears have brought. But it's so important that the viewer realize that they're perfect, that they don't have to bring anything to the table other than who they are at that moment in time. This is Michael Jackson and Bubbles. This kind of goes right back to like the Nekentibo image that we looked at, the first slide, Michael Jackson and Bubbles. When I made this for my banality show, I knew that to try to make work that would tell people that they were perfect, that everything they liked was perfect, that if they respond to pink for pink or blue for blue, whatever they like, whether it's a little porcelain figure, that's perfect. Their history's perfect, everything about them, that I would need to have some spiritual people there to let them know it was okay. So I made Michael Jackson and Bubbles as a contemporary Christ-like figure so that people would feel, okay, it's okay to embrace my past. And of course, this is in the same configuration as like the Pieta and Renaissance sculpture. It also has that Egyptian quality. This is the balloon dog. You know, the balloon dog, people say to me sometimes about my work being very optimistic, but you know, there always has to be some darkness to define how light and how bright something can be. And you have to be able to understand how things can go wrong to be able to put the best foot forward. So the balloon dog, even though it's a dog, there's an equestrian aspect to it. It's a little bit like a Trojan horse. And it has kind of a darker interior. And that's what happens when you put the transparent color onto the piece. The tail of the dog, too, also reminds me of a form of a Trojan. That's a prophylactic. That's maybe more of an American joke. But there's central aspects to the piece. They're very vaginal legs, the form that's created there. The tail's masculine. This is almost like a belly button, you know. I think a balloon dog, the reason that it has the type of power is that it's also very archaic. I could think of, in primitive times, archaic man looking at his kill, or female looking at the kill and noticing that the gases are expanding in the intestines, and that they would end up to make something like this. So it has a tribal, ritualistic quality to it. This is my metallic Venus from my Antiquity series. And I have a beautiful marble 2nd century Venus, Pudica pose, a takeoff of Praxiteles I wish I would have shown here. But this work, Praxiteles never made anything that looks like this, but it's making reference to it. And as in a work like Puppy or Split Rocker, where I incorporate live plants, this has a live plant in the vase here. And so it has that aspect of chaos that, it's going to grow. You don't know exactly, how large it's going to grow, how it's going to shoot up. And it brings together organic energy and inanimate. Again, these pieces, you walk around and they affirm you. This is my Farnese Hercules, gazing ball Farnese Hercules. And when I mentioned like a room that we're in now, all of us discussing what art can be, how art history functions, what the future for art can be, this is the type of dialogue, or at least what a large piece like this represents, a whole group of people talking about what the possibilities of art can be, what transcendence can be, what our parameters can be. But if I want to work like this, that gazing ball, it's a glass ball, Venetian in the origin. They were from the 1500s, but they excite the senses. You look at a gazing ball and my fingertips tingle, your eyes, want to get sharper. You can even hear, because it's Dionysian. It's a whole affirmation and the excitement of the senses. But then the object, the sculpture, also gets affirmed. Its shadow also goes into the ball and it falls into the shadows of itself. So you go from Dionysian into Platonism and the idea of the eternal through idea, pure form, abstract thought. And on the other side, you have the Dionysian, the leapfrogging of life energy. This is one of my gazing ball paintings. This is the last image that we're going to look at. This is the Tiger Hunt by Rubens. It's a gazing ball Rubens. And the gazing ball work I'm very, very proud of because it goes back to really the core things that were important to me. I love the generosity of the gazing ball. When I would drive around and I'd see people have a lawn ornament, this gazing ball, they do that for their neighbors. That's who gets excited. You go by, and here you have this GPS system. I mean, it's telling you everything it can about where you are in the universe at that time. So here in the painting, this is an exact replica. I shoot very, very high resolution images of these paintings, and every nick, every little crack, I try to capture everything in the history of the painting to give homage to Rubens. But the paintings are different sizes than the originals, only to keep the gazing ball activated. The Rubens would be much larger. The ball's only 12 inches. But so the ball reflects you, but it also reflects the painting. So when the painting's reflected into it, you go into the painting, you go into the Tiger Hunt, you go into the time of Rubens. And then Rubens is giving it up, and that's how we have transcendence in our life. It's by not internalizing and have everything compressed more and more and more about internal thought until it just compresses so tight and implodes, but that it's giving it up. It's finding things outside the self greater than the self. And Rubens was able to become Rubens through the practice of that, because Rubens is referencing Leonardo da Vinci and is referencing the Battle of Angahari. And Da Vinci would reference Utello, and he would reference I'm sorry, thinking about Chiretti. No, I'm getting. I'm sorry, Pierre. But Utello, the Battle of Angahari. But Leonardo, who this Sfumato. Well, yeah, okay. But that's how you're able to have transcendence, through this interconnectivity. And our whole life, our genes, our DNA, this interconnectivity, our cultural life is interconnected the same way, and it just runs parallel outside our body. And it can change who we are. It changes the expression of our genes. Our genes, through our cultural life, are able to create new synapses, and we become a different person. I'm a different person since Manet. And Rubens is a different person from Leonardo, and so on. And that's what this series is really celebrating. It's celebrating, humanism. and how we become. We become through giving it up to something outside the self. And that's why through art, I feel like, I have a desire every day to exercise the freedom to become a better human being, a better artist, and to reach a higher level of consciousness through that practice. And for me, it's the removal of judgment, the removal of hierarchy, segregation. That removes anxiety and is able to give us the freedom to actually realize our potential and embrace it now, and to make those gestures and not to be on our deathbed and right at that last moment of life and its passing realize, oh, it would have been so easy. It would have been, oh my gosh, that's all I had to do. And oh, it's so clear, that gesture, I could have done that the whole time. All of us, we can do that every day of our lives. And we just have to exercise that freedom. And that's what's important. It's not important that we're discussing an artwork, a painting, or a sculpture, but it's to celebrate life and what our potential is, and to share that with every human being. So I really want to thank you. That's my talk. If there would be any questions, I would really love to have some questions. But I'm thinking.
Merci beaucoup, thank you Jeff. Évidemment, c'est une conférence parfaite, amazing lecture pour introduire le festival d'histoire de l'art de cette année. Entendre un artiste nous parler des œuvres d'art qu'il aime, nous montrer qu'un artiste est aussi un historien de l'art, nous montrer qu'un collectionneur est aussi un historien de l'art, et nous montrer que nous pouvons tous aussi pratiquer cette forme-là d'histoire de l'art, que nous ayons les tableaux dans notre chambre à coucher ou non. Mais je dois préciser aussi que, comme vous l'avez entendu, Jeff Koons est aussi quelqu'un qui prête ses œuvres dans les musées et qui fait en sorte que tout le monde puisse effectivement aussi en bénéficier. Peut-être qu'on a le temps pour une question, parce qu'il faut que nous laissions la salle. Juste une question, et une question sur cette conférence, s'il vous plaît, que nous puissions faire en sorte que on ait une rapide réponse de Jeff. Just one question.
Okay. I just want to mention one other thing. So, I'm so honored. I have to pinch myself to be in the company of everybody that's here. And Pierre Rosenberg has been such an amazing friend. And I appreciate the friendship. This summer, I don't know if the exhibition's still up, but I was in Venice at the Carrara Museum, and I saw the drawing show, the amazing drawing show that was donated to the museum, the City Museum. And Pierre put together an exhibition, a drawing show. And Simone Voyer, what a fantastic drawing. I mean, it was a woman. I mean, this is a drawing. It's a little chalk on paper, but it's a drawing, and it's a woman holding a vase, and water's coming out of it, and it is so sensual, and it's amazing. I mean, it's an image that I think gives Origin of the World a run for its money.
Peut-être juste, voilà, une question. Je vous passe le. Can you put your...
Je vais dire en anglais. Hello. I loved your analyses of your own work, and I'm just wondering, while you're doing the work, are you thinking of all those things, back to the interconnections with art history and so forth?
I make my work very, very intuitively, and so I'm able. Usually, what I make today, I've been thinking about for the last 2 years. And I just follow my interests. That's all that we have as an individual, our interests. And I learned very early on when I was in art school that if I followed my interests, I could make art. If I would maybe be on a break for college for a summer, and then I'd go back to school and I'd start painting, it would be that nothing's happening. And then, okay, I'd focus on my work a little more, and then the next painting, okay, it's starting a little bit. But it's like starting a car, you try to turn over a car, vroom. So, okay, you focus a little more, and then, vroom. But when you focus on your interests, you realize that everything is here, everything's abundant, your interests are around you everywhere, and you realize the connectivity of those interests, and eventually, that just turns over, and here we go. And each moment, the senses get stronger, the intellect gets stronger, and you're in the realm of the metaphysical, and you're in the realm of the universal, time and space bend. And it never fails. So I just follow my intuitive thought and focus on those thoughts, and that's all you can do. I don't know what else a human being can do other than follow their interests, and what can be more joyful than that?
So the analysis comes later.
Yeah, a dialogue. I mean, if I reflect on something, kind of what its personal meaning would be for me, I believe that I'd like to take the responsibility to try to get the viewer to a certain vista, but then I realize, really from the very beginning, I can't control their reaction, even though I'm trying to, through biology and different meanings, hopefully, that they connect, to take them to a certain point that they can understand my motivations. But it's about their potential. I hope somebody will look at the tiger hunt, and no matter what they're interested in, they get an essence of their own potential, that they feel that their life can be bigger.
Merci beaucoup, merci à tous, et bon festival à tous.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We have to wrap if we want to go.